this room has some value. If you don't buy it inside, it doesn't mean anything. Every one of you in this room can make something happen in your lives. Now go out and do it. Thanks for caring. Here's the challenge, everyone. If you don't feel good from the inside, if you need the stuff in your lives to make you feel good about yourself, someone at some point in your life can take it all away.
I have a theory that if all of us knew the last day that we had on this earth, our entire lives would change. We would make friends and family the true value of our living here.
I advocated for everybody out there is to find their own dream, their own sense of purpose for their life, their own direction of where they want to be. And I found it, and I love it.
The whole essence of my message and has been impacted by an incident that happened when I was growing up in New York. I grew up on the Upper West Side, and there was a wonderful woman on my floor that every time I'd go up in the elevator with her, she was always like inviting me into her house, and she always had snacks. I remember Oreo cookies were great, and she had 6 locks on the door, as most New Yorkers do, you know, who were elderly. Anyway, it was, for about 2 months, I, wasn't thinking about her, and I walk in one day, and the super is coming out of his office. And I said, have you seen Mrs. Levy? And he said, Jim, he said, didn't she know she died? And I said, she died? What do you mean? What happened? And he said, we don't know. We didn't find her body until her rent was 2 months overdue. Now, imagine being that alone in your life, that nobody in your life connects with you until your rent is 2 months overdue. And when I say that in schools, I talk about that there are kids walking down the halls that walk right next to you that have that same experience of a sense of aloneness. There are people in, maybe at your workplace, maybe in your family, no matter what, are still struggling with being accepted. I call it best friends. Best friends is a safe place where you could be 100% authentic, because that's what everybody says that their best friend is all about. And I grew up as a kid without having that. I never felt safe. I never felt like I could be 100% authentic, because I always felt like that somewhere along the line people were going to, to step inside, see something that they didn't like, and then they'd leave, and it would just kick in to my already abandoned issues that I struggled with all my life. And the feeling of that abandonment was so overwhelming that, I masked it and walked around with a mask all day long. So nobody really knew, other than the fact that I was incredibly shy. And because of this, the aloneness was more profound. And her and her father just sat there, and they unloaded all of the things that had been inside of them. And it was 2 hours past visiting time. And her father looked at her and said, you've been here all day. You look tired. Please go home. I'm worried about you. She said, Dad, I'm not leaving. This is the closest we have ever been in our lives. I need to be here with you. I need to stay here. And he said, don't be silly. It's just the beginning for us. She said, I'm not leaving, Dad. He said, make an old man happy and go home. I'll see you first thing in the morning. Reluctantly, she went home. At 7:30 the next morning, her father died on the operating table. And I got a call from her the first day of grief to thank me. To thank me for giving her the courage to tell her father how much she cared. And there are so many people that are listening to this at this moment that can identify. And they can identify mostly with the fact that they don't feel safe. That they don't feel safe. And that is an essential ingredient in any relationship, is that feeling of safety. Because if you don't have that, then consequently, you're always going to be on. You're always going to wait for the axe to fall. You're always going to be in a position where, theoretically, someone's going to find out who you are. And people live with that every day. And it's such a terrible experience because it never makes you free. I mean, we talk about money making you free. Money doesn't make you free as much as feeling safe makes you free. I never believed in my life that if I was transparent that people would accept me. And finally I decided to make a commitment to be more transparent. To let people in from the standpoint of telling them how scared I was. And in the particular instance around bullying, which has been a specialty of mine, for a kid to say, this is hurting me. This is really, what you're saying is hurtful to me. Now, in some cases, it may accelerate. In some cases, it may diminish. But the idea is that you're being honest with people around you to let them know what it is that you're feeling. And it is my contention that in some capacity, every human being has this compassion point. And once you were able to tap into that compassion point, you were able to really, build on that compassion experience. So it then becomes supportive. I tell teachers all the time, I said, if you're not having a good day, announce to your class, I'm not having a good day, can I ask for some support from you? Instead of, my giving you my support, I need your support now. It's the same thing in a family. Family is so much into, my parent program is called Taking the Fear Out of Parenting, because it is so frightening and the need to control by parents is so profound that what happens is that there's no ownership of a son or daughter in that family. And I always tell parents, if there's one thing to remove from your vocabulary, it's to say to your son or daughter, if you don't like it here, you can go someplace else. Because you don't want them to go someplace else. You want them to feel good about being in this home environment. And the unfortunate thing now is, with high technology these days, kids can fly under the radar and they can virtually fool everybody in their lives. And with that, it's more difficult to connect. It's more difficult. And, it's easier for a kid. I went underground because I wanted to talk to kids about this. I went underground to a rave party. And I put a hat on, and a kid brought me in, and so dark it didn't matter. But I went out and I was getting a contact eye from all the drugs. And I was standing there rubbing my eyes, and I listened, and there was a kid, a young girl on the phone with her mom saying, "Mom, I'm at the mall with such and such. I'll see you later." And then she went right back into the rave party. And so it's easy to fool. It's easy not to face and be more courageous because of technology. I had an 11-year-old that told me that her boyfriend broke up with her by email, and she was so angry, and so she was crying, and she was so angry that he didn't have the courage enough to look her in the face and say this. We're moving away from this. We're moving to the song when I was growing up as a kid in the year 2525. We're moving into that element. And all the things that words in that song and George Orwell's 1984 are starting to come to bear. And unless we're losing intimacy, we're losing this ability to connect. The antagonist is equally alone, if not more profound. What I say sometimes in my programs is, if this assembly had happened in my school, I'd be sitting in the seats where you are, laughing and putting it down, and wondering why I went home that night feeling totally alone. And I say to, other students, I say, if you see somebody around you that's laughing or putting this down, know they need more support. Know they need more kindness. Know they need more of the ability to be able to feel like, they're not virtually alone. And sometimes we forget this. We're so busy in this kind of adversarial life where somebody comes in and they do something and you want to destroy them. You want to put them away. You want to do something, when the reality is most people don't understand that that person, although maybe not in the deeper sense of the victim mentality, where it becomes very profound, or somebody loses their life, or somebody does a tragedy situation, but the idea is that that person is equally a victim. That person is equally, in some way, shape, or form, has been destroyed in their own right. And the only way they know how to stop this feeling of constant being destroyed is that they have to climb over somebody to get to a level where they can feel good about themselves. And they use people around them to climb over so that they in turn can feel better about themselves. So when you understand this mentality, then you don't necessarily forgive the perpetrator. You basically at least have a clearer picture that it's not about you. That's the key that I've always said, that it's not about you. That because there's on one of my posters, it says, no matter who you are or what you do, there's going to be some people that like you, there's some people that will dislike you, there's some people that will hate you, and there are some people that will be indifferent. And the whole message to that is, it's never about you. It's always about the other person. I mean, you're just in the way. You're just, I say to my audiences, have you ever taken a life-saving course? And what do they tell you to do when you go out for a drowning person? You throw a buoy. You throw a shirt. You put a stick out there. Because they have no conscience. They just want to get above the waterline. And you become the ladder. And unfortunately, more people drown going out to save somebody than, unfortunately, than is saved. If we all came together and encircled you at this moment to tell you how great you are, if you don't buy it inside. It's my hope, and I've had this hundreds of times. One of you here will see me in an airport or a mall, come up and tap me on the shoulder and say, hey Jim, I heard you speak 5, 10, 15 years ago. I want you to know I'm going after my dreams. I'm feeling great about myself. And most of all, I'm given to a whole lot of people in my life. And I'll walk away with the most incredible smile on my face. Every one of you in this tough times can do something to turn it around. And none of you ever in your life has to go it alone. I was at this breakfast place that I bring work to, and sit there, and it's usually a crowded breakfast place. And there was this couple sitting probably an arm's length away from me, and they were sitting there, and they had their heads bowed, and they were eating oatmeal or cereal, and they were texting, and I put my work down, and they weren't even looking at each other, and I turned to them and I said, you know, I noticed your wedding rings, and, you know, you must have come here together, but you don't seem to be talking to each other, you know, or, you know, are you married? And they say yes. And I said, well, you know, who are you texting? And that's when they said each other. And they were like probably, you know, right across the table from each other. And I thought to myself, this has become almost, you know, rote in what we're doing in our lives. And young people are growing up with this, so they don't have any other point of reference. And the only way we can stop some of this madness is to be able to still make friendship important, make you know, human connection important, make the ability for us to be open and real important, as opposed to hiding. And if we don't do this, we are evolving into this robotic situation. And that scares me more than virtually anything else, is this robotic situation that we have found ourselves in. It's being afraid of technology, but in the sense, it's a double-edged sword. And obviously we know today, you know, how vital technology is. We also know how it creates a dependency. And it is in this dependency that we all have to be able to look at in the healthiest of ways to stay in balance. And the balance is, you know, this ability to build on relationships in our life by sometimes looking into somebody's face. We don't look into people's faces.
There is no magic formula to any of this. It's a thread that goes through us all. Every one of us who is watching this video has had someone in our lives who has moved away or passed away that we wish we could bring back for 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, to tell them what's in our heart.
Once you establish your own uniqueness, there's a great concept that I happen to love. Unfortunately, I'll never be able to be part of it, but I happen to love it. It's the Red Hat Society. And the Red Hat Society came out of a poem, "When I'm old, I will wear purple." And the idea behind that is that, you know, after a while, when you truly understand that nobody is looking at you because they're too busy trying to take care of their own lives. And we're consumed with the idea in our lives that everybody is looking at us. Everybody sees us and they say, oh my gosh, look at that person, and look at this, and look at that. But in reality, when they go home at night, they close the doors. They are consumed with trying to survive, trying to be happy on this earth, trying to find their purpose, trying to find whatever function they can live with. And so consequently, even though you may think that you have this incredible self-importance in the bigger picture of people's lives, it's not there. It's not there. And you want to know how I know this and understand this? It's that when people pass, they're remembered for a day or 2 or 3. And then all of a sudden, they're totally forgotten. And most human beings, you know, they can't see that through the course of their lives, so they give away the store. They give away who they are. They compromise who they are. They become sometimes a clone of another human being. They take the identity of other human beings. What a silly way to do that. I do a goals program for kids. And one day I'm looking in the back, and there's 2 kids copying off of each other, copying each other's goals. And I thought, you can't get more absurd than this. You know, you're copying somebody else's life. Where are you in that picture? So you give away the store. And you know, once you do that, it's an ongoing snowball effect. You just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And then you wake up one day and wonder why it doesn't work for you. It doesn't work. In my programs, I go to 3 adults in the room, teachers, administrators, principals, and I say to them, how many people do you know in your life that are truly fulfilled and happy? To this day, after 33 years of speaking, I haven't found one person that knew more than 6 or 8 people in their life truly fulfilled and happy. And then I ask, how many people do you know in your life? I know hundreds. I know thousands. And I often wondered why it is in our culture where people from all over the world want to be here. They want to come to this country. And yet so few people are truly fulfilled and happy in their lives. And I had to figure this out for myself. In our life, we are so busy heading to the direction of wants. We're manipulated all the time by advertising and by the media, and we go into that direction of wants. When I lived in New York, there were 2 women in Macy's that were fighting over a Cabbage Patch doll, and they bloodied each other at Christmas time. It was the last Cabbage Patch doll on the shelf. And I looked at this and I thought, this can't get more ridiculous. They were physically putting each other at harm and, you know, and all bloody and everything over a Cabbage Patch doll. Well, we create the same scenario. We create this want. But what fuels every human being is need. And our needs are different. Our needs are different. And we're like salmon swimming upstream to try to get that need met. So the idea is to identify what it is that you need and then build on that, you know, on that identification. And unfortunately, human beings, you know, they don't do that. And the irony of it is, I go around in my session and I ask, you know, if I could write you a check for any amount of money in the world to make you feel financially secure, how much would you want me to write that check out for? And everybody will tell me, outside of the magic $1 million, everybody will tell me something different. And I'll say, what just happened now? And nobody knows where I'm going. And I said, every one of your needs was different. And every person's need is different on this earth. And if we start to, you know, to give away that perception and we start to focus on what other people need as opposed to what you need, again we give away the store and again we create this sense of unhappiness. And that's a sad thing. In my life, when I first graduated from Michigan State, I held 6 Fortune 500 jobs in 18 months. I mean, enormous companies. And I would start and stop and sabotage, and I didn't want to be there. And in the bigger picture, I didn't know what I wanted, obviously. But when I came in touch with this concept of needs, and I put my priority of needs, and what my priority is, I wanted to make a difference in my life. I wanted to move that grain of sand, number 1. Number 2, I needed to be creative. I needed to use my mind, which was my creative strength. And number 3 was that I needed to be independent. Couldn't work for somebody. So when I finally discovered what all those needs were collectively together, then I could pursue a career field that would meet those needs. And that's the aim of what's happened. And not only has it been phenomenal, it was the greatest decision of my whole life. To go and to pursue something that fueled in me every single day that love and zest for life.